Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan, and this is Sync 57 Sports. This is the discussion part of what we do in Sync 57. And I want to be very clear and upfront. I am not about to go Skip Bayless on anybody. All right. Let's just get that out of the way right now. I'm not going to make crazy tweets about how neither team is going to make the conference championship game. I'm not going to make Super Bowl predictions about Burrow and the Bengals and Brady and the Bucks. It's just not going to happen. What I am going to do is fairly assess the Bills and Rams game. Of course, we got UFC to talk about, and then, of course, college football coming up this weekend. But right out of the gate, obviously, I really want to get into the Rams taking on the Buffalo Bills. And look, neither team is going to really go back to the film room on this one and go, yep, that was a really great game. They're not. They're going to say it's week one. We made a lot of mistakes. Both teams made a lot of errors. 7 turnovers combined between the two teams. 4 for the Bills. You had 3 for the Bengals. The fact of the matter is this. If you take away all the turnovers and all the other stuff that both teams really had to deal with, typical kind of first season game, just to be honest with you, is I just don't think LA was as aggressive as they should have been. You take Buffalo, for instance, third and short on their opening drive. I'm thinking, and they're on the Rams side of the football field. Okay. I'm thinking to myself, look, man, just quarterback sneak this thing, get a first down, keep the ball moving, keep the clock running. You're doing really great. You're dictating. Why not just stick with that? Well, they went ahead and decided to go for it, and they threw a deep play, and Gabe Davis was wide open. Dude was all alone, right? Similar situation. The Rams get it back on one of the turnovers that they forced, and instead of, hey, taking a shot downfield or doing something over the middle, they ran the football right up the middle. You've got momentum. It's your stadium. Be aggressive. There were so many instances where I thought it was just such bad play calling from the Rams. Now, you know, the heat may have had something to do with it. I mean, to be honest with you, on both teams, there were heat advisories for days on end. I think there was 8 days of heat advisories. At the time of kickoff, if I remember correctly, it was 97 degrees outside. So I'm not going to say that didn't have anything to do with it. I don't know if Stafford's arm is really 100%. I do know this much, that when it boiled down to it, Josh Allen and company made enough plays, right? You look at the throw of the touchdown that he made to Stephon Diggs, really wasn't the best throw in the world. Stephon had to come back to the ball to the point where when he put the brakes on, he actually fell down, right? So when you look at this game as a whole, you say it was probably an ugly nightmare for both teams when all is really said and done. Josh Allen, despite the numbers, if you watch the game, you'll know that he actually played really good football. All right. It wasn't something that was an ugly nightmare for Allen. One of the interceptions you could easily say wasn't his fault. The first one, right, went through his own guy's hands. And give credit, LA's defender at that point made a really good play on the football. But when all is said and done, Josh Allen absolutely 100% outplayed Matt Stafford. He outplayed the defense. And again, when I say this came down to coaching, at the very beginning, Buffalo was very content to, we're going to take short plays. We're not going to try and move the ball all over the place. We're not going to go deep right away unless we set it up with like a play action play. We want to do everything that we can to nullify Aaron Donald. That was the idea. We're going to try and take away that pass rush. We're going to make things really complicated for Ramsey in the backfield. We're going to figure out a way to get him out of position, and that's exactly what they did. They forced that defense to creep up using those screen plays, using those short throw plays, balancing in some of the run game, which wasn't the greatest, all right, for Buffalo, but it was enough to be able to get the job done and keep the defense honest. And when all is said and done, you really can't ask for a hell of a lot more than that. Obviously, you want to clean up the turnovers, the fumbles, the interceptions, some of the penalties, okay? But when you look at it, do you say to yourself, is either team a championship team? I mean, to be fair to Skip, but it's also just the first game. And to not watch Cincinnati play yet, and to not watch Tampa Bay play yet, and just presume that both teams are going to be there, we don't know how they're going to look coming out of the gate. It's only one game, okay? And even if the Rams season is dictated upon what we just saw in this first game against Buffalo, let's try to remember something. Repeating is not as easy as everybody thinks it is. I know that Tom Brady made it look like it's something everybody should be able to do, right? Tom Brady made winning look easy. But a quote that I've used over and over and over again in my life and in my career came from Bob Stoops, a guy that I have been very critical of over the years. Now, Bob Stoops was very clear when he said, look, the thing about winning is people think it's easy, and it's not. You want to be a winner? It's not going to be easy. And you're the Super Bowl champion, so you are going to have a target on your back. In addition, you've got Buffalo coming out trying to make a statement, okay? Everybody thought that game was over against Kansas City in the playoffs. I don't think there weren't a lot of people who just didn't get up and get a beer, get a snack, or whatever the hell and think, Buffalo did it. They won. They beat KC. 13 seconds happened. That's all there is to it. Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, it happened in real life. All right. So you've got to remember that you were playing against one of the better teams in the NFL last season. And they wanted to come out and make a statement. And it's a huge for them to win 31-10 and to stifle that offense the way that they did. And I think we're seeing Matthew Stafford being Matthew Stafford again. I don't know if it's going to be the elbow or not. Maybe somewhere down the road we'll figure that out. But right now, it's just Matthew Stafford being Matthew Stafford. If the run game isn't there, if the offense isn't clicking and doing what it needs to do, we all know he's a tough SOB, right? Through a game-winning pass with a separated shoulder, he's a badass. That's all there is to it. But we're just kind of back to the same old, really, to me, is what it looks like. UFC, wow. Yeah, nobody's really knowing what's going on with that. Everybody's kind of keeping that on the hush, at least from what I've seen. And right before I went on right now, I tried to find anything. Is there anything out there that's definite that can be confirmed about whatever the hell happened with Nate Diaz and company in that back? I mean, at one point, I think Dana White said there's probably 200 guys back there all getting it in. A lot of people are going to say Nate Diaz is a problem and blah, blah, blah. And, I'm not the biggest Nate Diaz fan. I'm not going to go off and call him a gangster or nothing like that, like a lot of people are going to say he is. Oh, he's a thug. He's this, he's that. Dude, he's a fighter. They're all fighters. We've seen this before. This is nothing new, okay? It's so much more publicized now. Back in the day, you had, Hoist Gracie's brother, Rex and Gracie, who was challenging people at the gyms. Hey, man, no rules. No ref, you come to the gym and we'll figure this out. That's how shit was done back then. It's not like that anymore. Everything is taken care of inside of that cage. But every once in a while, it spills over. And guys, gym rivalries are real. You don't believe me? Go to a gym that's a rival with another gym and try to say good things about that other gym. See what happens. See how long you last. The team commitments are a real thing. And that was a big part of what was going on with Khabib and McGregor. People forget that Khabib cornered McGregor's guys the first time around in that hotel lobby. And then McGregor retaliated. He hopped on a flight and said, I'm about that life, flew to America out of Ireland, and went right up to that bus and knocked everything around. Whether you like it or not, that's a different story. But the fact of the matter is a lot of it boils down to gym rivalries. Yeah, sure, religion and political issues and all that kind of stuff ended up coming into play. But 9 times out of 10, that's not even really the said issue. It's really not. Gym rivalries are a very real thing. And if you don't believe me, talk to MMA fighters about it, and they will tell you. I interviewed Amanda Nunes one time, and I always ask people, is there anything you don't want to talk about before we go on the air? The first thing she said is, I don't want to talk about Hoist Gracie. Even though they're both from Brazil, their gyms are rivals. There's no love lost, guys. That's really what it amounts to. And I'm telling you right now, it is a very real thing. And Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz and all those guys, man, they take this shit serious. It's not a game. Now, I'm not condoning what happened back there. Dana White's going to have a huge problem later on. I can tell you that right now. He might be able to cover this thing up for a little bit, but eventually at some point, all this shit's going to come out. There's going to be a huge problem, and the UFC might see some real trouble. Some real trouble. We're talking fines, suspensions, and we're talking all the way up to the top. You get the commission to step in on Dana White saying, hey, what the hell's going on? Because they're going to want to know. And they're going to want to know why Dana allowed all this to get out of control. That's what that's going to amount to. So we'll see. As of right now, the fight is still on. But, man, Dana's going to have a lot to wrestle with. A lot to wrestle with. All right. Obviously, this week, top 25 football. Florida, they're going to be trying to prove that it wasn't a fluke what happened against Utah, right? Utah comes in ranked number 7. But to be honest with you, last weekend was just another confirmation that I have said for years. It only reaffirms that preseason top 25 polls just do not belong. We don't know who the good teams are really up until about week 5, 6, 7, or 8. That's when you start separating these football teams, all right? And I know that it's good for the fans. They get to say, oh, my team's ranked 22 to start the year. My team is ranked 9 to start the year. And that's all fine and dandy. And I know that the NCAA, a lot of it is just them trying to draw a rating. But that kind of blew up in their face because Florida State played LSU, and neither team was ranked going into that football game. LSU sold out Florida State sold out all 30,000 of their tickets almost immediately. LSU sold out their end. They filled the Silverdome. So when it boils down to it, the preseason ratings and rankings don't mean diddly. We have seen teams that have been preseason ranked at the top 5 and not even end up finishing in the polls. You take Ole Miss, what was it, back in 2015, somewhere in that neighborhood, started out the season ranked number 4, ended up finishing the year, what was it, 8-5? Tennessee right now, they're ranked. They're getting ready to play Pitt every single year. By week 1 or 2, Tennessee's in the top 25 polls. They play some team that doesn't matter. And for some reason, the NCAA world of voters decides, hey, they're a pretty good football team. No, they're not. At least we don't know that yet. How can you know that after one game of football? Just like with USC beating up on Rice, we're going to watch Florida play Kentucky no matter what. Okay? We are going to watch Alabama play Texas no matter what. There's too much tradition there. Too many graduates. I've always said that football is regional and national at the same time, right? Like a buddy of mine that I grew up with, huge Notre Dame fan when we were kids, ended up going to K-State. Now he's a huge K-State fan, but still watches Notre Dame. It's both regional and national to him. Being a K-State grad, it hits home for him. But he still has that affinity for Notre Dame. So when it all boils down to it, the reality of it is we're going to watch no matter what because it's college football. And I believe that there are a lot of people who prefer college football over the NFL. You look at the pageantry, the atmosphere. I always play it louder. The band's going. There's just something that's calming about it to us, right? Now, do I agree with the idolization of an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, especially from a grown, individual, somebody who calls somebody that age a bum and a loser? No. I'm just keeping it real. But the fact of the matter is we still don't know who's really good and who's not. We don't know if what happened with Florida last week was a fluke. We don't know if Utah was overrated, and they just had a fluke game. Whatever the case could have been, we don't know, okay? Alabama taking on Texas this week, obviously probably going to be a huge game for Texas. They haven't really beat anybody of significance for a very long time. They've got to do something. They've got to do something to prove that they are who they should be because obviously they're going to be heading the SEC very soon here. And boy, I tell you what, if that Bama game will tell us anything about what their stint's going to be like in the SEC, it might could. Florida taking on Kentucky every year. Kentucky again, one of those teams we see them ranked high for a while. They end up getting washed out. We'll see what happens there. I'm looking for Florida to continue to dominate. If they want to make a statement and say last week wasn't a fluke, don't win by 5, don't win by 10, don't win by 3, win by 30. You've got Tennessee and Pitt. Pitt obviously no more Pickett. We're going to find out a little bit more about them. Tennessee, everybody expects SEC teams to be at the top. I wasn't really impressed with any of the teams out of the ACC last week. As a huge Syracuse fan, I was really glad to see Syracuse get a win over Louisville, especially the way that they stomped Syracuse out. But how good was Clemson really against Georgia Tech? Yeah, the final score dictated that, something else happened in that game that really didn't happen. And that was we didn't see quality football from Clemson. All right. So the ACC really not looking all that great. We're going to find out about Pitt and how good they really are or not, especially without Pickett. And which, by the way, they had that kid and still struggled last season. So I think those are the main games that I'm going to be looking at. Baylor obviously is going to be playing BYU. If anybody knows me, you know I love the underdog. BYU, right? Coming in ranked number 21. Again, ranking systems mean about as much to me as two goats walking in a circle. But when all is said and done, Baylor, the Big 12 is just awful. It's so overrated every season, right? OU will go to the playoff and get dusted by 30, or they'll blow that lead like they did against Georgia. I get really tired of the Big 12 being ranked every single season, 3 or 4 teams out of there, OU, Texas, sometimes Baylor, once in a while at TCU. Baylor's going to have to really do something big to impress me. I will tell you that. And then I guess the last thing I want to go with, obviously, is the top 25 coaches poll. They're going to be expanding, obviously, the playoffs, right, to the 12 teams. They're trying to get it done as early as 2024. We know what they're waiting on. Obviously, USC's heading on over to the Big Ten. OU and Texas are taking off. They're heading to the SEC. The Big 12 might as well dissolve. They're bringing in Cincinnati and everybody else too late. If they would have done this 4 or 5 years ago, brought in a Cincinnati, a Houston, a BYU, maybe things would be different. But the Big 12 is done, and I'm a huge fan of Cincinnati. Obviously they lost week 1, hard-fought game. But the problem with the playoff to me has been we are still reliant on what teams did 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's just not that way anymore. And the expansion of the playoff will hopefully give teams like Cincinnati's and Boise State's and Utah's, when they weren't in the Pac-12 and they had Alex Smith. And if I remember right, their coach, well-known guy, Florida, Ohio State, Urban Meyer, right? Undefeated season. They didn't get a chance to prove if they could really hang in or not. So to me, expanding it to 12, it should have been 12 to 16 to start out with. Okay, I think you take your top 16 teams that are ranked in the country, because basically after that, you're looking at the same football team, right? You're going to be looking at teams that are ranked 18, 19, 20, that are 8-3, 8-4, 9-5. Come on. You're looking at basically the same football teams. At least with 12, we're going to get some more variety, I think. Hopefully this isn't a way for them to start bringing in 4 or 5 SEC teams, okay, that don't deserve to be there in the first place. I know everybody thinks that the SEC is the it, all right? The SEC West, that subdivision might be, okay, but when it boils down to it, if you've been watching college football over the last 15 years, you know that Alabama is carrying the SEC. That's just a point-blank situation. How many other teams from the SEC have won a championship? Other than Georgia, the one. I'll wait. Clemson proved it's really not about strength of conference. Not about strength of conference, right? They beat Bama when they were serious underdogs. And how good was the ACC that year, right? Or in any year for that matter. And really, when all is said and done, how good is any conference? And sure, you can go and look at conference win from bowl games and all that nonsense, but all that really proves is that team was better that day. That doesn't prove the strength of a conference, because if we're doing that, the SEC really isn't that strong. Just throwing that out there, especially when you look at the fact that, they'll be beating up on some really bad teams, or some really decent teams will be beating up on some of their supposedly really good teams, not great teams. So throw that factor out there as well. But I'm looking forward to hopefully them getting it done quicker, although I know what they're doing. They're just waiting for, some of these changes in the conferences to happen, which, by the way, if you don't like it, get over it. Too bad. It's always gone to the highest bidder. What do you think Coca-Cola is? What do you think Budweiser, these sponsors? Come on, really? These stadiums wouldn't exist without insurance companies and Corona and come on, seriously? Yeah, get over it. It'll be fine. The game you love will always be the band and kids trying to make it to the NFL. That's college football in its simplest form. If you were to rip the lid off of college football, come on, get serious. SMU, the death penalty, what do you think that was about? Paying kids. NIL deals are a good deal. The universities don't have to worry about shelling out dough. Leave it up to somebody else. And most of those kids are probably going to get sponsorship deals with some local dealership for $150. Who cares? Stop it. Okay? Everybody's going to be fine. College football is going to be fine. Okay? It'll be fine. All right. All right, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. This was Sync 57. Debate me. See how it goes.